Hi, my name is Pradyumna Satish Kumar, and today I will be talking to you about the show Fresh Off the Boat, created by Nanachka Khan, based on the book Fresh Off the Boat, a memoir by Eddie Huang. Now, this TV series follows the course of Eddie Huang and his Chinese Americans family and how they moved from Chinatown in Washington, D.C. to Orlando, Florida in order to open up a Wild West themed steakhouse restaurant called Cattleman's Ranch. Now, the main purpose is to show how an immigrant family tries to make it in America. Now, this is a theme that many people, especially myself, can relate to, even though I may not be Chinese and the story talks about moving within the United States. I can definitely relate to the general aspect of how a family from a different part of the country managed to settle in America and the struggles that they have to face in their everyday lives, um, especially in regards to establishing a strong foothold in Western society and learning how to cope in this new environment and essentially make it big and pursue the American dream. I can totally feel how Eddie must have felt when he first came to school in the US and being an ethnic minority. Now, proceeding on with the story. So, the background of the story. The story is said to be around the mid to late 90s. Season 1 and Season 2 are the two main seasons in this TV series. Season 1 mostly shows the everyday initial challenges faced by immigrant families when settling down in a new area, especially a white dominant community. Now, this was the father's decision to move to Orlando. His name is Louis Huang, played by Randall Park. You might also know him from the movie The Interview, where he played as Kim Jong-un. Now, Eddie's father, embraces the American dream and Western ideas and wants to open a Western-style restaurant, which I found to be very weird for somebody of an Asian ethnicity, because the general pattern with people of this ethnic group when they move to a foreign country is to open up restaurants, if they're going to choose that route of business, from their culture to promote their culture in a foreign country to be able to make themselves feel comfortable and make other people who are of that ethnic group feel comfortable and to make the transition into a foreign place smooth. But a Western style restaurant is very unique. Now, he's relatively easygoing yet very hardworking. Now, the mother, her name is Jessica Huang, played by Constance Wu. She is very much opposed to the decision of moving, but still sticks through with it because of new business opportunities. She is not too keen because the community in Orlando does not have a large Asian population, unlike the community in Chinatown, Washington, D.C. And she's very skeptical of Western culture, and she's a very strict mother, and very hardworking, very diligent, and she isn't a very open-minded person. So this is kind of like possibly, playing into the typical stereotype of a strict Asian parent, possibly even the Tiger Mom stereotype. Now, Eddie Huang is the main character, the protagonist, let's say, of this TV series. He's the oldest sibling of three kids, and he faces a lot of struggles in assimilating into school because the school's predominantly white, and he tries to blend in, but eventually things follow through with him. His two other siblings, Emery Huang, played by Forrest Wheeler, and who's the middle sibling, he's mature and charismatic for his age, and he easily blends in, which is, typical stereotype in which younger generations, they lose their cultural heritage, which kind of makes them easier. It makes a process of blending in Western society smooth, let's say, compared to Eddie Huang. They have a better time. This is even true for the youngest, Evan Huang, the smartest of the siblings, was also the mother's favorite, and he easily blends in as well. It's also typically easy for the youngest when you move into a new country when you're really young, because you're relatively a blank slate and you start to build on different values that you learn in the new society. So the transition must have been the easiest for him, but the hardest for Eddie in regards to the children of the family. Then you have Grandma Huang, played by Lucille Sung. So now she is the oldest in the family. She is Louis's mother, and she's a paraplegic, and she speaks only in Mandarin, but she utters a few words in English now and then. She's a source of wisdom and very much in tune with her cultural heritage. It's also important to note that Jessica Huang is more culturally in tune with her heritage compared to Louis Huang, but both parents also preach the fact that they should keep a strong hold on their culture. The dad is more easygoing. Which is typical of this whole female and male family dynamic, in which the mother tends to be more protective and culturally stringent, whereas because it's in her nature to be with the home and the hearth and the family, and to conserve her values. Whereas the father's role is to support and work and find new business opportunities and bring in the bread and butter in the family. That's a very stereotypical look of family dynamics, but that's probably why he's also more open to change. Now, the season 2, the family is settled in their community, but there's still situations in which they run into here and there that are a result of them being of a different race and coming from a different culture, which we will see in the following analysis of the scenes that I've done. So for the first scene that I have chose to talk about, Season 1, Episode 13, the dialogue with Honey and Marvin. So Honey and Marvin are a married couple that Jessica and Louis befriended. They are a white couple. Basically, in this episode, Jessica is concerned about not being Chinese enough, and the reason being is that when Jessica and Louis, Honey and Marvin go out for dinner, Marvin brings up the topic of a country club, and he offers Louis to come and join him, and it'll be a fun bonding time. However, Louis was a little bit apprehensive, but then when Jessica heard that there are a lot of businessmen that meet and make a lot of business deals, Jessica encourages Louis, hey, you should go here, you can have better business opportunities for our restaurant. It'd be really good for us. So Louis has this huge fantasy in which he fantasizes being in this country club. And in that fantasy, there are a lot of white towels, white uniforms being worn, a lot of white men, and the camera angle was pointed to the white people, a little bit higher, and Louis a little bit lower. And in a comical scene, Louis, he drops his towel, but all the white men manage to maintain their composure except Louis. So we'll talk about more what this means in a little bit. But at first I want to touch up why Jessica started to be concerned about not being Chinese enough. It's because eventually Marvin states that, now that you guys are more settled, it'll be good if you can join the country club. We don't really see you as different. You're like regular old Americans. And Louis likes this, and he's really happy because he feels accepted. But Jessica is a little bit apprehensive. She thinks, wait, what do you mean? And when she finds out, Marvin essentially states that, we don't see you as Chinese. We see you more like Americans. This is more alarming to Jessica than it is to Louis, because Jessica's worried about how that they have drawn away from their culture once they settled here. So in this episode, that's the main focus. Are we Chinese enough? Is what she is. She's not sure what to do, because she wanted Louis to go to the country club to expand business, but now they have to cut down on their cultural heritage. So she is trying to put two and two together. She's not too keen at this point, because she feels that her cultural heritage is being jeopardized. Okay, and some important terms that I noticed that can be used to describe this scene: assimilation. So Louis's attempt to blend in to Western society via getting in touch with the rich white men in order to expand business opportunities, which is reflective of the pursuit of the American dream. The model minority myth, in which their actions feed into the idea that Asians are successful immigrants and are better off than the other ethnic groups. And that same episode, Season 1, Episode 13, the other scene is when Jessica Wong goes full-on Chinese. Essentially, she makes purely Chinese food, like true, authentic Chinese food. A little bit extreme because she cooks chicken feet, claiming that it's good for the skin. And she puts on Chinese hairstyle and a Chinese garment typical of a woman. And she gets all flustered. So basically, Jessica is very much trying to get back in touch with her Chinese roots. And though she enjoys the fact that the business is booming, she holds her cultural heritage as a greater priority. Like I mentioned earlier, this is probably typical of the women in the family. And she thinks that losing one's culture may lead to losing oneself and possibly her own children into pushing her away, similar to what occurred in the poem in Immigrant Acts, in which she saw a gradual pushing away from the cultural heritage in the poem, in which you have a Japanese lady who settled in America. How she pushed away from her mother's purely Japanese culture and adopting a Japanese American culture, then how her daughter pushed away from her Japanese American culture to pursue a primarily westernized view of the world. So one important term that I can think of would be authenticity. Jessica is essentially concerned that they're not being properly Chinese enough. So she believes that they're not being authentic Chinese individuals. And they need to be back in touch with their culture. Now, the most iconic scene that I feel that I can kind of relate to is Season 1, Episode 1, when Eddie enters a school cafeteria. So being a new kid at school is always nerve-wracking, but it's even more so when you're an ethnic minority and your name is not like the other kids' names, so you have to forcibly adopt a nickname. And you want to know, are people going to like me? Are they going to hate me? What's going to happen? Am I going to get in trouble? What's going to happen? So essentially, Eddie, first day at school, new surroundings, predominantly white kids, sits at a table with mostly white kids. And the reason why he's able to sit at this table is because he was wearing a t-shirt that had a rap artist on it. Now, this is important later on. So kids call him in, and then when he's about to eat his lunch, he opens it and it's noodles, and the kids all get grossed out thinking it's worms, and they make fun of him about it. I can personally relate to this scene because similar things have happened to me when I bring my food that is from an Indian culture. Some people didn't go all out to mock it, but they looked at it being like, "Hey, what is that? I haven't seen this before. This is weird. What is this?" But in Eddie's case, it was more extreme, almost bullying. So Eddie was was shunned for being different, which is an inherent part of our human nature to shun whatever we think is different. It's a natural process, it's a natural cognitive process to see if people are part of our in-group or out-group. However, it doesn't make it right, especially in modern society. Mocking a foreign entity for not blending in with the current society is seen in many countries, not just in the USA. Many kids of immigrant parents can understand what he went through. Now, however, he still manages to blend in with the school eventually. This is because of his interest in hip-hop and R&B, which during the time period was very popular in the music industry, and that was his way of trying to blend in and, establish a foothold for himself in society at the time, so that he won't stand out. So I can see a simulation taking place here. Eddie's attempt to mingle with the kids via hip-hop and eating white, quote-unquote, white food like sandwiches and chicken nuggets, as unhealthy as they are. I could also see evidence of racial triangulation because Eddie gets into a fight with Walter, the only black kid in the other minority group in the school. And he comes out victorious, which kind of can be related to the racial hierarchy in Immigrant Acts, in which Asians are seen as greater than blacks, and you have a racial competition occurring. Now, the fourth episode of the first season, in which Jessica invites her sister and family over, you can probably see many Asian stereotypes in which mostly revolve around the fact that Asians are very hardworking and very competitive, and this is a very interesting perspective that they took on it. Because this is also something that many families of this ethnicity can kind of relate to. Maybe not to this extreme, but they can, kind of subtly relate to it. For example, the Huang family invites Connie Chu and her husband Steve Chu and their son over. So Connie is Jessica's sister. Both Jessica and Connie are very competitive and they crave for their mother's attention. And their mother is very strict and not a very affectionate woman. So both sisters are incredibly competitive. They want to win the mother's approval. And this can kind of tie into the whole tiger mom stereotype of being a very strict Asian parent, tough love, having expectations beyond the rooftop, and expecting your kids to far exceed those expectations. Which is very much true from what I've seen in this episode about Jessica's mother. So, and she, unlike other families, she encourages this little rivalry in an attempt to inspire greatness in kids. So I can see a lot of model minority occurring in this episode, mainly because Jessica was trying to because both families, the funny part was both families were in a financial pinch, but both families were trying to make themselves seem very financially affluent, and they tried really, really hard on it. And they got what's called success perms, in which Eddie stated that it was his people's way of saying that at the given time period that they were being successful, which I had no idea about the stereotype until I saw that episode, but I found it hilarious, and I can totally understand where they're coming from. Because every ethnic group has some sort of symbol that represents their success in a foreign society. So there is evidence of model minority in this scene, which portrays Asian stereotype of having Asian immigrants be the most successful ethnic group in Western society. Okay, and that they're highly competitive. And moving on to the second season, in the 6th episode, you have Louis Huang given an opportunity to appear on the media. Now, the second season, by then, they've kind of settled down and things are going fine for them, but like I said before, they're still running into certain blunders as a result of their background. So this is a good example. So one day, Louis in his restaurant, he was taking care of his customers, and he managed to see 2 TV hosts to a TV show called Good Morning Orlando. And they were big fans of his restaurant, and he was talking to them. Eventually, the conversation led up to him doing impressions on a Good Morning show called... Sorry. Lost my train of thought there. The conversation went from talking about the restaurant to Louis doing impressions of various individuals from pop culture, such as Donald Duck, Sylvester Stallone, Michael Jackson. And because of this, the TV host saying, "Hey, why don't you show up on our show, or our Good Morning Orlando show? And this can also be a good opportunity for you to advertise your restaurant." Initially, Jessica approves, but she has no idea why he was chosen to go on the show and what he would say. So when he actually goes on to the show and he does his impressions again, he also talks about his restaurant, which is good, but he also does these impressions, which Jessica, given her nature of being a no-nonsense individual, she found it to be very insulting. And when Louis questions as to why she finds it insulting, she tells him that, there's a very low ethnic population of Asians in Orlando community. And when an Asian is given the chance to broadcast their greatness, in this case, the business of the Cattleman's Ranch restaurant, to media to advertise, he or she should do it in a professional manner. And Louis's comedic antics kind of portrayed a very derogatory stereotype of all the Asians. That is what Jessica taught, and she doesn't realize that she is kind of stereotyping the white people in the community by thinking that they would stereotype the Asians from watching Louis Huang, which I found to be very interesting, but I can kind of understand what she's saying. And she basically tells them that, you should take this seriously and you shouldn't make a mockery and fool of yourself. You should go and tell them to apologize for making you act like a fool. So Lewis goes and makes a huge scene, getting him kicked out of the rest of the TV show. But then eventually he apologizes and everything's fine. And Jessica learns that it's okay to lighten up once in a while. But when I further analyze this Lewis and Jessica's attitudes are reflective of their nature and their roles. Lewis's attitude, he's happy and he adheres to the personality of pursuing the American dream, and he's more welcoming and opening to the white culture. And essentially, he just wants to promote his restaurant as well, and to better support his family. So, and he also is a very jovial guy, and he likes when people give him attention. So he didn't think about the whole stereotyping of all the Asians in the community problem at all. But Jessica, being a person who's very skeptical and always adhering to her cultural heritage, she is more likely to view certain situations with a very stereotypical view on Western society, which is why she kind of got mad at Lewis. And in this episode, there's a lot of evidence of status, in which you could see this through how the white people in the show could possibly be subtly mocking the Asian Americans because they feel that they hold a higher status in society. And authenticity, Jessica believes that Lewis's comedic antics were not a proper way for a Chinese American civilized adult man should behave. So, from what I think about this TV series, I think it's an amazing TV series. It's a TV series that many people, like myself and many others, many of my friends and family, can relate to a lot. I'm glad that they're bringing this into light, because there aren't a whole lot of TV series that are this good about Asian Americans. And this really, it's other than the comedy and the entertainment, it's really bringing forth and shedding light on all the issues that Asian immigrants face when coming to the United States, or immigrants in general. So I felt a connection to this TV series, to the characters, to my own personal life experiences, and whether you are feeling the same type of connection with these characters or TV series after my video blog, or not, or whether you just want to have a nice laugh, I would seriously recommend that you watch this TV series. Thank you for your patience, and I hope you enjoyed my blog. Satish Kumar out.